Right. This week we're going to be looking at Erdinger from Germany. However, to start with, we're going to be hopping over to Joe on the hot topic, looking at some interesting news about Brixton Brewery.
Yeah, so hot off the press here in the UK is the purchase of a minority stake in Brixton Brewery by none other than Heineken. Brixton Brewery is, we haven't done an episode on Brixton Brewery yet, but we will do. But it's a very local favourite, obviously coming from southwest London, South London of Brixton. So obviously it's a local favourite here in South London, Brixton Brewery. And, the fact that Heineken, a big player like Heineken, has taken such an interest and is willing to put their money where their mouth is in a company like Brixton Brewery shows that, what we know as a local jewel, a local talent here in, in the South London of Brixton should be shipped and known to the world. Like, Heineken is going to give them, even though it's a minority stake. So, Jez and Libby Galen, these are a couple, a married couple that started Brixton Brewery. Again, we haven't done Brixton Brewery yet, but we will do. Fantastic background story to that. So watch this space for a Brixton Brewery episode. The fact that they are still in control, they're still a majority stakeholders in the company. The fact that Heineken is is putting money behind them, but is not ruling the roost at Brixton Brewery is music to, I think, everyone's ears. We don't want to see a company like Brixton Brewery at this stage where they're still developing, they're still growing. They've been around since 2013, so an 8-year cycle right now, but that still is early days. I mean, we've heard very recently, obviously Camden Brewery getting bought out by AB and Bev. We're hearing these big names that are kind of being taken, Frontier is, from the Fuller's Brewery is now part of the Asahi group. We're hearing a lot of these like local staples here in London kind of being taken up and have interest by the big players. So I'm just very pleased personally that a company is still its own, but has some more financial backing. Rich, go.
I was just going to say, it's just nice for a brewery to be able to keep its individuality, because we see so many of these breweries over time kind of lose it slightly, that when they get brought out by a bigger company, by a bigger brewery, it kind of takes the individuality away. And it's nice to see Brixton Brewery kind of still being able to own it, still being able to put out those little bits and bobs and still kind of feel like a smallish business, and but it's nice to see that there is kind of like a recommendation or a commendation that they are destined for bigger and better things, but they're not being sold out completely. It's kind of more of like a slow build towards greatness, I think would be the way to put it.
If I'm honest, I can interject a little bit. I would slightly disagree that, I get the sentiment you're saying in that, you don't want a big company just to come in and it just to feel like it's a big company now and you've lost that kind of local hero, as it were, in the local area. But I think what these bigger companies are doing so smartly now over the last 5 years is they are taking these local gems, those smaller breweries, but still making them feel like they're still independent. I mean, look at Camden. Camden is owned by the biggest beer company in the world, and yet we had to find that out by doing the research for the podcast. You had no idea. I had no idea that Camden Town was owned by AB and Bev until we did the research on it.
Isn't that the same with Meantime as well?
Yeah, the fact that they're owned by, or they have controlling rights by Asahi, the Japanese, the third largest brewery in the world, but the Japanese conglomerate is news to us. That's a new news.
The one thing I would say is for me, this situation that they found themselves in is only a good thing. And I think it should be seen as, do you know what, this means that there potentially is bigger and better things to come from Brixton. So you can see it. I think some people would see it as, they're selling their soul a little bit because they just want the money. It's no, they're realizing that by getting that extra investment, they can develop themselves more, and they might come out with some more interesting beers, and there might be some more interesting investment that comes around Brixton itself. And I think that can never hurt, especially in this situation where, as you said, it's a minor investment. Minor being it's not going to be minor. There's going to be a lot of money involved, but the fact that it's only going to help flush them a little bit better.
And this isn't a new thing that Heineken and Brixton have been in partnership or had some level of communications. I mean, behind the scenes, Brixton and Heineken have been working together for years now. Specifically the last 3 years, Brixton have been leveraging Heineken's expertise and market reach to, help grow the Brixton brand and grow their, they put their beer out there. So, I think there's this kind of the announcement that Heineken is putting money into Brixton is really just to kind of showcase the fact that there already is a relationship there between these two companies. And I think what we're getting across is that Brixton is a fantastic organisation that we'll do in the podcast, but we don't want to see that lost. And thankfully, I would have to say that I'm for this, because we have seen with the likes of Camden, and we saw with the likes of Meantime getting bought out by Asahi, in that these companies can still be backed by bigger brewery organisation. That's going to happen, but they can still keep their individuality and they keep what makes them special. So across the board, I think we're looking forward to this, to see what happens next with the next life cycle and stage of Brixton Brewery. Right, in this week's Pursuit of Hoppiness, we are donning our lederhosen and travelling to Bavaria for Erdinger Weissbier.
He huffed and he puffed and he signed an eviction notice.
Great Shrek quote. Always a big fan of the Shrek quotes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have you guys ever worn a lederhosen before?
I wish I had. I wish my answer to that is yes. I've spent the money, because lederhosen, as I know it, if you're not from Germany or Bavaria specifically, you've probably been introduced to lederhosen if you've tried to go to Oktoberfest in the past, because that is kind of like mandatory wear, to wear your lederhosen and to go and don it on. But lederhosen is like a legit, traditional dress. It's expensive as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can definitely say the one I purchased was probably not as traditional as, we'll say, a traditional lederhosen. But I did the Oktoberfest that came to the Isle of Wight. And I might have donned a lederhosen for that.
Oh, yeah. Of course, that well-known Oktoberfest. The Oktoberfest in the Isle of Wight.
You have to, on the week that this podcast comes out, you have to put an image of you in your lederhosen.
I will try and dig it out or find an image of me and being my lederhosen.
Thinking about Erdinger and obviously everyone's thinking about Oktoberfest and Erdinger as because it's German. As in, for me, Erdinger links me straight to my hockey tour at uni where I went to Berlin, and it was something that was very easily accessible and I'd never experienced. I'd never had Erdinger before. I didn't even realise what a wheat beer was. So it said, we're a wheat beer. We're the biggest wheat beer brewery in the world, sort of thing. And I had no idea what that actually meant. For the difference between a wheat beer and a normal beer is the fact that most beer is barley and rye and has ingredients like rice and corn in it, whilst a wheat beer has to be at least 50% wheat, which I think is completely different to what you're normally used to.
So going back to wheat beers, you absolutely hit the nail on the head in the differences. Obviously, it's very wheat derivative based beer. It's called a wheat beer, a Weissbier wheat beer, German wheat beer. But I think what's fascinating about this is Erdinger in itself is a classic German wheat beer, or Weissbier as it's referred to. It's got so many different arrays of aromas and flavors. It's still brewed by Erdinger in the heart of Bavaria. And it has that kind of capture of the traditional sense of the pale body capped with an abundant creamy white head. And I think if, I've poured this out into a glass so you guys can see, it is beautiful. And I will say that I am such a fan of a wheat beer in that, its color, its coloration. I think there are so many beers that, are very tasty, but don't look great. They're more functional. Whereas an Erdinger Weissbier is beautiful in that setting, in just the coloration, putting it up against the light, the fact that how the oranges and the different kind of scents that come through it. And then you start putting your nose to it. Oh my word. I'm just transported to the only time I've ever been to Germany, at a family trip to where we met with my Australian cousins in Berlin. And I have to say that I drank nothing but Weissbier while I was there. And it was a phenomenal experience. I just cannot rate it enough.
It's really interesting because obviously you're talking about how good it is and you forget how old this company is. So it started in 1886. It's over 130 years old. In 2016, it celebrated its 130 years of operation. And the fact that in 2019, it sold over 1.7 million hectolitres of its beer. Like, this is such a big company, and the product is so, like, I feels perfected to me. Like, it's so good. Like, I've had other wheat beers and I've been disappointed with the flavour, but this one just hits the right, like, pocket for me.
Well, that's it. It feels so. Well, you said it's been going for how many years, Simo?
So in 2016, it celebrated its 130 years of operation. So over 130 years.
Well, that's mad. 130 years. You'd assume they'd have got the recipe right and they'd have nailed the marketing and everything like that. But it's fantastic to hear a beer that is steeped in that much tradition as well. And that goes down to, like, when this is the first time I've tried Erdinger, which is right now. I've tried other wheat beers. I think the first one was when me and you, Joe, were in Amsterdam with Matt, and we tried some wheat beers when we were in the tram station. We tried a really nice wheat beer that was in there.
It's really good that you brought that up, because there is a difference between a German Weissbier and a Dutch Witbier. So it's very from the same derivative of like 50% of the wheat, but it's just very different, slightly different takes on it. So Erdinger is through and through the German side of it, whereas if you've had like a Hoegaarden before, that is very much the Dutch version of a Witbier.
Okay, well, yeah. That's good to know. As I said, every day's a school day, and I like this. But what I've really, really enjoyed is the design on the actual bottle. We've seen a lot of these new craft breweries and stuff like that are coming with these incredibly funky, incredibly picturesque, that clearly employs an artist, graphic designers to create something that's fantastic. But what Erdinger does is they've gone very simple and very subtle. You've got the main Erdinger logo, which clearly has a wheat in the middle of it, which clearly is wheat in the middle of it. They're showing what they're named for. They're showing what they're passionate for. But in general, the whole design is very, very simple and simplistic, but it works because it's very, very recognisable at the same time. Now that I've seen it, now that we've spoken about it, I will always know what an Erdinger is, what an Erdinger beer does.
I actually find it interesting as well. Like, they're very proud to be Bavarian rather than German in itself. So they are really giving a homage to the fact that they are Bavarians. As in, like, I'm not sure if you've got this on your bottle, like the extra middle line that says Bavarian double maturity method. So it's the fact that they're really giving a homage to the fact that where they have come from. And it's really cool that it's almost like they're steeping their bottle in history. And I really like that.
Well, I think actually the location that it's from, Bavaria, is so important to this brand, because it's like champagne. We talked about champagne in a recent podcast, in that you can only get a proper champagne from the Champagne region in France. It's protected because that's where you get it from. And wheat beer, in this essence, in the German Weissbier style, it's true through and through Bavarian. Right, if you go up to Berlin, you go up to, kind of the northern, like Hanover kind of areas, northern Germany, you have a load of different types of beers that are simple. But a wheat beer in Germany is Bavarian. It is such a traditional Bavarian drink. And it makes sense, because if you think about Bavarian agriculture back in the day, it was wheat. Bavaria was the breadbasket of Germany for a very long time. The climate and what they grew there was wheat. So, that would only naturally make sense that when you have an abundance crop like wheat, what do you make with it? Well, of course, after you've made bread, what else do you do? Naturally, you make beer. And so that's why this Bavarian beer and the wheat beer is so strong and has been brewed so long. I mean, I know that Erdinger is like 130 years old, I think you said, Simone. But wheat beer has been around, obviously, so much longer than that. It's one of the oldest variations of beer in the world. I mean, we think back to here in the UK, mead, using different, that was our version, like the UK's version of basically what a wheat beer is. It's using a crop that's abundant here in the UK, and you make mead from it. Whereas wheat beer is obviously taking the abundant crop in the Bavaria region of wheat, and they make a beer from it. I love that kind of link back to what could have been drunk hundreds, if not thousands of years ago.
One thing I've noticed on their website, which I adore this sort of stuff, and I think we've talked about it in the past, like Joe's definitely noticed this in the past, is they've talked about having the right glass for it. And they've got this glass that they've said is tailor-made for their wheat beer. And it's supposedly, it's like a super thin and it goes out and it like fattens at the top and then slightly narrows as you go upwards. And it's the fact that this upper spherical shape concentrates the aromas and makes them appear more intensive due to the curved shape of the glass.
I'll give you an additional fact on that, Simo. So that style of the Erdinger glass is actually a derivative of the German Hafweizen glass, which is the very traditional glass that you would then have these wheat beers in. As you said, it's kind of thin at the bottom. It kind of is broad. It comes thin at the bottom and then it bulbs out at the very top. So that Erdinger version is obviously their take on that. Like all great breweries will have their own version, their own glassware, but this is still derived from a very German type of glass called the Hafenweizen.
Hafenweizen? I love it. Absolutely love it.
So we've talked a lot about the history of Erdinger. We talked about the history of wheat beers in general, but I need to bring this back to the 21st century and their current work with Jurgen Klopp.
The legend that is the Liverpool manager.
Who, if I'm honest, I always thought was Dutch, for no reason other than his last name, but he is through and through German.
Oh, massively.
He is a German man, and he is a fantastic gentleman in just that his attitude in life is great.
Yeah.
Whether you like Liverpool or not, you can like Jurgen Klopp. And Erdinger have teamed up with Jurgen Klopp to do a whole load of promotions lately. I don't know, you're looking at me through the screen like you're not sure about this, and I can tell you it is definitely working. Erdinger in the UK have gone full into having their celebrity endorsement by Jurgen Klopp.
That is amazing.
So they have released an Erdinger Weissbier in a celebration can, which has Jurgen Klopp's face and signature plastered all over it.
That's epic.
They have a whole advert campaign right now, which is mostly being pushed through YouTube, which has basically the bar is set, okay? I'm setting you guys the scene of this advert, okay? So you have a bar back in the day when people could go into bars in the UK, and you have up on the screen, you have Jurgen Klopp sat at the bar, and there's a barman pulling a pint of Erdinger into one of the special Erdinger glasses, okay? You have up on the back screen a crowd of people in the bar watching a Liverpool game, and it looks like it's like they're close to scoring. There's a couple of passes, they're closer towards the box, and, it then cuts back to Jurgen Klopp, and he says, "Stop!" This is my great German accent I'm doing now. Yeah. "Stop!" And everyone turns around as if he's saying stop to the football. Like, what? Like, you went to watch Liverpool win. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, "Don't cut the head off the Erdinger. You never cut the head off the Erdinger." So like the Dutch version of the white beers, and we talked about the kind of the skim off the top. The Erdingers and the German style beer, you never cut the top off the head. Like, you leave it be all full of foam, you let that come out, and you just try it. And actually, there was a nice outtake that they actually put on the end of the advert of Jurgen Klopp, who was like saying, "It's actually a pretty good beer." He was like commenting on how it's a good beer. So, I do feel like it's it's an advert, so always take all of that with a grain of salt, but it adds a lot more personality to this very German beer that we've not really heard of too much before, but we've known the name, but we haven't really had too much of a brand personality in the past.
I think, to be fair, that's a really clever way to get it out there, because with someone like Klopp, who is so likeable in a sport that is so popular, it's only going to help the brand. Like, it's only going to help. And also, with him being so current at the moment, because he is so liked and so loved everywhere, and Liverpool being a group, like, let's be honest, Liverpool Football Club is a global, like, people always forget that football clubs become global. Their name is a brand, and people forget that it's just a company, essentially. Like, football club, like the fact that that will go everywhere, and Klopp is liked everywhere. Like, the one thing that I think that Klopp has is that likable factor, which makes you think that this beer is likable. Do you see what I mean? As in, it instantly links you with a likable beer, and I think that's really clever.
Well, it also, he is a likable person, but it gives a personality to the brand, which, let's face it, brands are, unless they're a brand, they're a company, they're an organization, so they're always looking for ways of humanizing a brand, personifying a brand. And I think Jurgen Klopp, for them, obviously, if you have a celebrity endorsement, that becomes your personification. Think about other celebrities that have endorsed brands and what you think about them. Nescafe, George Clooney. They are so linked now that actually Nescafe has taken on of George Clooney's personality, has become in part of Nescafe. Who else you got? You've got obviously Ryan Reynolds with all of his, he's got Aviator Gin. Like, that is just through and through Ryan Reynolds, Aviator Gin, and how he markets it. So celebrity endorsements can do an amazing job. at giving a brand a personality. And I think Erdinger, this is a great case because obviously it's a company that's been around for a very, very long time, but they've made it relevant for normal audiences. One celebrity endorsement gone wrong that I will tell you about. Do you know the show Jersey Shore?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes, exactly. So there was a guy on there called The Situation. So that's what he referred to himself. And he was
Was his name The Situation? Or that was his nickname?
No, as in he called himself The Situation.
Yeah, he was called Mike The Situation. I've forgotten his last name, but it was something like Italian-American at the end of it. And
I already hate him.
He would always take his top off. He was bright orange because of the tan, bright yellow hair, and he had an 8-pack. So he was in amazing shape, but he knew about it and he was all bravado. Anyway, he used to wear Hollister clothing and Abercrombie and Fitch clothing specifically all the time. And Abercrombie and Fitch tried to pay him to not wear their clothes anymore because of the brand association.
That is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant.
Celebrity endorsements, they can work and they can really backfire at the same time.
I want to talk about the taste because for me, this is the most. I cannot compare this to a lager. I can't compare this to a craft ale. I can't compare it to ale. This is something so unique yet brilliant at the same time. I love this.
Why don't you compare it to a wheat beer?
Yeah, wheat beer, I was going to say.
I can't compare an elephant to an orange. It just doesn't work. But I know what you're saying. Basically, trying to compare it with different kind of beers that we have already, and you've got a lot of frame of reference to, but a wheat beer is through and through a wheat beer. It is so different to anything else.
I haven't had many wheat beers in my life, right? I don't generally go out and try and find them. I don't think they're that accessible where we are. But I love what we're having now. I think it is a genuinely amazing, good taste, and it feels like I could have it. This feels sessionable to me. This feels interesting enough that I would have more than one. I don't feel like this is something that's trying to be unique in terms of it's not trying to be quirky or wacky. It's a fantastic wheat beer.
Well, that's what, like I was saying, the only other time I think I've tried a wheat beer was when I was in Amsterdam with Joe. But this is definitely a different style. It definitely tastes different to the one that I have. For love nor money can I remember the name of that beer. It was fantastic, whatever it was wonderful. But this Erdinger as a wheat beer, and I don't have a massive comparison to go on, but if all wheat beers that I try from now on are based around the Erdinger flavour, the texture, and how smooth and nice it goes down, I am sold on wheat beers sort of thing. I don't think it's something I'm going to go out and regularly buy, but it's definitely something that if it's there and I can try it, I definitely will.
One thing that I was actually thinking about when I've actually tried wheat beers before, and on a Beer 52, they sent me a pack and there was about 3 or 4 wheat beers in there. And I had those and I was like, I'm not a big fan. But this is much smoother than those, and the taste isn't as abstract, or it doesn't I don't want to say the word offend me, but it feels like this is a lot smoother than the other wheat beers I've had in the past.
So I think in similar vein in that we're finding there's a craft beer resurgence in general. We always tend to think of IPAs, double IPAs, the kind of the craft ales as being the thing that's been happening. But that's just the European or the kind of the English, American, Nordic countries that are absolutely loving IPAs at the moment. But if you look into Germany and Poland and, and the countries around that, they are having a huge craft resurgence on wheat beers as well.
Yeah.
So you can have the same variety in wheat beers as you're having in other lagers now, and you're having in IPAs and APAs. And I would just say that Erdinger is obviously through and through a traditional wheat beer. It's a very palatable. It's got so much flavour to it. And if you haven't had an Erdinger before, I would definitely highly recommend, if you're a fan of light beers, try it. Definitely throw your ring into the hat. Have it cold as it's intended, in its proper temperature. Have it in a glass, because why not? If you can get yourself on one of the special German Hefeweizen beer glasses, then do it. But if not, just put it in a chalice like I'm doing, and it is delicious.
You literally made me realise I had a Beer 52 Polish edition. And that's where I had the wheat beer. And Joe is completely right. There are so many different wheat beers you can try. And I would say from the ones I've had in Poland compared to this one is honestly top notch.
So you've tried the Erdinger, but have you heard of the the Erdinger Isotonic drink.
No. So I am from the very start worried about this. So we also have the Erdinger. We cannot rave enough about this wheat beer. And please do try the Erdinger Weissbier, the traditional one. And they have a load of different other beers. So this is not just Erdinger's, they're not a one-trick pony. They have loads of different ones. But they have recently released an alcohol-free or alcohol-frei, which is German. That's my German accent.
That was perfect.
Simo, I am intrigued because they refer to it as an isotonic, contains vitamins, reduced calories on the label. But you found out something a bit more interesting about how they're describing this beer.
They're calling it the Sporty Thirst Quencher. Now, it is claiming that it supports the regeneration process, whatever that means, right? It also only has 25 calories per 100 millilitres, which is actually pretty decent.
That's really good, yeah.
Isotonic and contains vitamins B9 and B12. Basically, these are, they promote the normal functioning of the immune system. So it's the idea that it will help against the idea of disease or getting infections and viruses, which is awesome, right? However, it is kind of claiming now with the advert as well that if you go for a run or if you are cycling or whatever, you should drink an Erdinger isotonic drink, which is now obviously isotonic drinks you can get. So you can actually buy isotonic drinks that are from Lucozade or whatever, and they're supposed to do these things. Now, I just find it completely intriguing that they are claiming that this beer has all of these factors. It's amazing.
We talked about it before in the past that we joked that you should have non-alcoholic beers and an infinite session ale. After a hard workout, you should neck one of these beers. But these guys are literally saying that you should have it as you're running along.
Okay, so I've only recently got into running in the past 6 months or so. Some may say I can run 10K. I can. It's a fact. It's all right.
Jesus Christ.
Again, it sounded so natural how you said that.
Just naturally came out. Rich Rabble can run 10K. What a guy. But it's, but I would not want to swig this on my journey round anywhere. It's just...
In all honesty, I haven't even sniffed it. I've just opened the top of the bottle yet, and I'm going to try and sniff a bit of this now. So let me give you my immediate nose on this.
Whilst Joe sniffs, one thing I will say is that I find it highly intriguing that the way that they've linked this to athleticism and sport, it's very new. I've never heard that before. It's very intriguing. It's kind of like, are you saying that it's the same? Interestingly, they're saying that the bitterness. Now, this is one of the first companies that have done this. So they put the two bottles in. They're slightly different colours, but on the back they describe them as the same. Right, we've seen that, and all of us have gone, well, that's not true.
Yeah, so Doom Bar do it, and Ghost Ship do it as well, in that sense, yeah.
However, this time, I've looked on their website, they instantly have put the bitterness from mild all the way nearly top bar to completely bitter. They haven't changed the colour, which is fair, because the colour doesn't necessarily have to change, but they're saying that it is far more bitter.
And you're talking specifically, you're talking specifically about the colour of the liquid, right?
Yeah, so the colour of the liquid doesn't change. However, the bitterness so the normal one is not bitter, and they're saying that this one is completely 100% more bitter. So I like the fact that they've acknowledged the difference, but I want to now try it.
So I am intrigued because going back to what you were saying about before, they clearly label isotonic. Contains vitamins. The fact that they're even outwardly saying that it links with you should have it with sport. It's like you're having a sports drink. These are very, very unusual wordings and phrases to use with a beer. I know this is their 0.5% or less than, no more than 0.5%. So, this is definitely their kind of alcohol-free version. But this is unusual of a beer company or a beer in general or beer-related drink to be talking in this kind of language. So this is unusual for consumers. We don't know this in that sense. We're thinking of heavy Lucozade isotonic drinks. We're talking about sugar gels, fructose syrup, slow-release carbohydrate stuff. We're looking for these kind of things when you're talking about sports drink. So they are trying to play in that kind of sports drink category, but this is a beer. So I feel like this is as we would say, this is the bridge over the River Kwai. This is a bridge too far. I feel like we're going into a category now where this beer company is trying to play in like we're doing more vitamins for you, we're better for you, we're healthier. And as a rule of thumb, beer companies cannot do that kind of language. That is not appropriate for beer companies to do, because at the end of the day, it's an alcohol derivative drink. This has got alcohol in it. So you can't claim that it's better for you. Beer companies, as a rule of thumb in advertising, you steer well clear of any of these kind of claims, because you open yourself up to a quagmire of liabilities and lawsuits and potential things, because people can say, well, I drank your beer for, 5 years and I didn't get healthier. So, what are you saying? It's like what happened with Red Bull and their famous catchphrase of Red Bull gives you wings. A guy in the States sued them for a lot of money because he said, well, you say Red Bull gives you wings and I've never grown wings. I've drunk this drink for the last 5 years and I haven't grown wings. It's preposterous, but you open yourself up to those kind of like ridiculous liabilities if you make such a statement. So I feel like I'm a bit worried by Erdinger's non-alcoholic or alcohol-free by making such claims about isotonic and contained vitamin stuff, and that it's and they're saying that you should pair it with sports so overtly. Because even like Michelob Ultra, which is through and through paired with sports in the US, does not say you should run a marathon and be drinking Michelob Ultra while you're doing it.
I'll say about the taste is it's definitely bitter. It is definitely more bitter. Like there is, like, regardless of the taste, like of the rest of it, it is definitely bitter in aspect of when you drink it. However, it's not the worst non-alcoholic beer I've tasted.
We've tried a lot of non-alcoholic beer in the past 2 months. Like the most I've ever tried in my life has been in these past 2 months. And this is up there with one of the better tasting ones. One that I'm not opposed to drinking. One that I would not be opposed to drink again. Sort of thing. We've tried non-alcoholic beers that I would downright refuse to ever try again because they were just awful. They were not a good representation. But this is a tasty, low alcoholic offering.
So I would say that I would put this Erdinger alcohol-free. It is not a very close representation of the Erdinger beer. The Erdinger Weissbier specifically is very nice, but this is a very palatable German style on an alcohol-free beer. And the last German style beer that we tried that was alcohol-free was Lucky Saint, and I can quite honestly say this is so much more palatable than Lucky Saint.
I would definitely say, though, that I can tell that this is Erdinger. Now, it sounds a bit daft to say that, as in, like...
No, I don't think you're wrong there. I completely agree with you, Simone.
As in, like, I feel like that with a lot of non-alcoholic stuff we've tried in the past, you've gone, what the hell is this? This does not represent the company. This does not represent the company. This is completely false. When I drink this, I'm like, it kind of tastes like Erdinger. It's not as good. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the alcoholic version does taste better, but I can when I'm drinking this, I'm like, it got that essence. It's got that essence of Erdinger in it. And I think a lot of those other companies that we've talked about in the past have not done that.
What it really has is got that wheaty hit. I can taste the wheat in Erdinger, and I can also taste the wheat in the Erdinger non-alcoholic, which I think is a big bonus. In a lot of the other non-alcoholics, I couldn't get that hoppy taste that I get from the other beers that it feels like a beer. If I was to drink Erdinger non-alcoholic and somebody was to tell me it was alcoholic, I would be on board with it, sort of thing. I'd be like, yes, I can taste it, I can feel it, and I know it's there, sort of thing. And I think that is a big bonus and a big tick in the general direction for the Erdinger, that they've done something right. It's not quite Erdinger, as I say, full fat. It's not quite Erdinger, all the alcoholic, but it is definitely Erdinger, and it's something palatable, something nice, and definitely something I could go for again.
I agree. I think this is a great, the only thing we question obviously about this is the fact that it's calling itself an isotonic, beer, just because that's unusual.
Yeah, I mean, if it, like, genuinely speaking, right, if it has the things in it, yes, great. But I wouldn't, if you're an athlete, I wouldn't go, right, let's drink this instead of just water. Just Water is better.
So I also love. I'm going to do the numbers on social media, but I've literally just clicked onto their Twitter, and their banner is like the Erdinger can, the which I've never seen before. The bottle, which is the one we have, which is fantastically blue and lovely, and a glass of it. But the tagline is the refreshing isotonic recovery drink.
Wow.
So they're like,
okay.
they're not even saying like, oh, this is an alcoholic free version of their beer. They're just saying this should be used as like a sports recovery drink. Can someone, fact checker, can you quickly Google to see if there's any actual scientific evidence that Erdinger is backing up the fact that they are a recovery drink? Because they can't make those kind of statements unless they've got a fact behind it.
If you put things like B9 and B12 into your drink, like if you're actually putting those vitamins in there, like they technically are useful in terms of your immune system. So like you can't, it depends what you see as a recovery, because obviously the idea is like those vitamins are useful. Like don't get me, like if you have those vitamins, they are going to help your immune system, which however, having them within alcohol, I have no idea if that is actually beneficial or not.
Well, let me put this in perspective in that how this is not like associated with a normal beer. I've gone onto Twitter, I followed them, and it also has suggested what you also might like on Twitter. And the two Twitter pages that have come up are UK Cycle Chat TM and UK Run Chat TM. So this beer company has created a beer that they're positioning as a refreshing recovery drink. And that has hit with all the algorithm, and this just shows how weird this whole situation is that they're now being paired on people's search bars and in the other pages that they could be related to in fitness and, kind of like sports. So I really think that Erdinger has to be the publishing or have to be saying that this is actually isotonic and better for them, than they are, because that's crazy. So on Twitter, they have 6,000 followers. On Instagram, they have 11,000 followers.
I mean, I would definitely say Erdinger is just, you have to have a go. You have to try it. And I think that you have to try the non-alcoholic version as well with it. I just think it's worth a punt.
I also think it's not a bad non-alcoholic version, as Rich was saying.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think it's a really nice non-alcoholic drink, and it's a nice drink also as well. When I've been out for a long run, I'll probably grab one and try to put it to the test as a recovery drink. Rich, maybe your next 10K, you'll have a couple of Erdingers afterwards.
Recovery!
And that's all we have time for this week's episode of the I'll Try That podcast. And so from me, Joe,
Rich,
and Simo,
goodbye. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram,
Twitter,
and watch us on YouTube.
Goodbye now. Always drink responsibly, and if you or anyone else needs some help, go to drinkaware.co.uk for more information.